Guys rock! March 9th, Luther Burbank Center, Santa Rosa, California. Well, I've finally hit the road. I just finished up 2 shows in Santa Rosa, California. Both performances were sold out. I was so excited when I found out. I was afraid I was going to have to take a bullhorn to the mall and give tickets away. Since I didn't have to, I had more time to shower and change before the show. Speaking of which, my act is really starting to take shape. The best part was that the audience was definitely laughing with me and not at me, like the time I performed with my Oxford shirt on backwards by mistake. You'd think someone would have told me before I went on. The staff at Luther Burbank Center were so accommodating. The theater had a very nice green room. Green room is a fancy showbiz term for a backstage waiting area. It's not actually green, but no one dares ever mention it, not if they want to keep their jobs. The room was appointed with my few simple requirements, just a big bathroom, a comfy couch, and a kiln in case I want to calm my pre-show jitters by fashioning an urn. March 11th, Capitol Theater, Yakima, Washington. I was a little nervous about performing in Yakima. It's a pretty small town, very quaint. I didn't know if they'd accept a city girl like me, coming in with all my fancy city ways, my highlighted hair, my constant use of the word barista, my subway tokens. I couldn't have been more wrong. The people of Yakima, Yakimites as I now call them, were so warm and kind and polite, and they loved to laugh. I'm now putting Yakima on my list of top 10 favorite cities, along with Paris and Rome. March 14th, Kansas City, Missouri. Arrived in Kansas City last night. Checked into my hotel under my usual alias, Nellie Serenegd, but the hotel clerk wasn't fooled by my little charade. He said, "But Miss DeGeneres, that's just your name backwards." With my cover blown, I hastily checked in as Gwyneth Paltrow, only to notice Gwyneth waiting to check in right behind me. What are the odds? March 18th, Grand Junction in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I loved performing at Kansas City's Midland Theater, a beautiful old building built in 1927. Sammy Davis Jr. and Dolly Parton have played there, so I guess it was only a matter of time before I did. As a performer, I've always felt I was a perfect mixture of those two, with a dash of Carol Channing for zest. Then it was on to Grand Junction, Colorado, and Colorado Springs. Both shows were a delight. Have I mentioned my opening act? Karen Kilgariff is the head writer for my new talk show, and she's been traveling with me for the entire tour. She's doing an amazing job warming up the crowds. Having a warm-up act is kind of like having your own personal food taster. Karen bravely goes out there to see if the crowd is good. That is, if they taste good to her. Some audiences, of course, are an acquired taste, but if Karen thinks the audience is poison, meaning they're sleepy and unresponsive, I don't go on. Instead, I'm whisked out the back door to the safety of a cozy neighborhood bistro. March 19th, Colorado to Seattle. I'm writing this as we drive through the frozen tundra of Colorado towards an airport that might be open so I can get to Seattle for a 7:30 show. There was a huge snowstorm. Most of the roads are closed. We've been driving in the storm for 2 hours and have a couple more to go. We're all hungry, but there's not one store or restaurant open. In a desperate attempt to eat, I tried ordering room service, but realized that our hotel would have to airlift the food to our car. The Denver show was canceled because no one could get to the theater in a blizzard. I'll be back in Denver March 26th. Hopefully the weather will cooperate. Getting to the show was no problem for me. My hotel was right across the street, but I guess other people live farther away. To pass the time during the storm, Karen and I have been gambling, playing cards, and pool hustling, all at once. It's been causing great confusion, and consequently we're making a killing. Actually, I heard that a few expeditions did try to make the trek to the Denver show, but most had to turn back. A 5-person team from Argentina had trained for 6 grueling months for the event. They say their spirit was not broken, and they vow to make it to the rescheduled March 26th show. So here we are driving along. Karen, my assistant, my tour manager, and Louis, my choreographer. We've got to make it to Seattle. Of course, since we're all from L.A., where a cold snap means high 60s, none of us have warm enough clothes on. I'm kicking myself for wearing my favorite travel sarong, and I know Karen is questioning her tube top choice. I'm getting a little concerned. I see cars on the side of the road abandoned by their owners. If we break down, I have a backup plan to go by sled. I've been systematically collecting animals along the way to assemble a team. So far, we've picked up 1 squirrel, 2 dogs, and something that could be a hedgehog or a possum. I'm not sure. But if he can pull, he's in. If the sled idea doesn't pan out, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know how to build an igloo or prepare whale blubber. Later that night, at the Paramount Theater in Seattle. We made it in the nick of time. After using several modes of transportation, including a car, plane, and finally a collapsible canoe that I had wisely packed just in case, we arrived safely in Seattle. It was all so worth it. The Seattle show went so incredibly well that I've become giddy. I love the people of Seattle, every single one of them, but I especially adore the people that came to my show tonight. Being on stage and making people laugh is really an amazing feeling. I wish I could explain it. I wish I could book all my fans into select venues across the country so they'd know what it's like. I've just been informed that we're heading out to the Great White North after spending about 4 hours in Seattle. The only sightseeing I got to do was reading a brochure for the Space Needle Tour. Sure looks neat. March 21st, Orpheum Theatre, Vancouver, British Columbia. I was very excited to perform in Canada again. It's like a whole different country. Learning about new cultures is so interesting. It's very important when visiting other countries to at least try to speak their language. During my set, I made sure to pronounce about as aboot. It's the key to winning over Canadian audiences. Went to dinner after the show and sampled one of Canada's local specialties, Funyuns. At least that's what they told us. March 22nd, Schnitzer Concert Hall, Portland, Oregon. Well, I'm back in the United States of America, in a beautiful city called Portland. It's taken a bit of getting used to after my whirlwind international experience. I've been on the road for almost 2 weeks now. I miss my animals. I wanted to bring them along, but then my posse would include mostly cats and dogs. I think a posse is considered cooler if it's primarily people. Gotta wrap this up. We head out to San Francisco in the morning, and I'm going to need about 12 hours of sleep so I can make it up those hills. March 24th, Davies Hall, San Francisco, California. I always love visiting San Francisco. I lived here long ago when I was just a penniless stand-up comic just starting my career. I took a cable car to see where I used to live. It's amazing as you get older how much smaller everything seems. Turns out my old apartment was actually a galvanized steel garden shed, 8 feet wide by 3 feet deep by 5.5 feet high, from Sears. I've come such a long way. For lunch, I ate all the famous local foods, all at once. Rice-a-roni, the San Francisco treat, sourdough bread, and a refreshing glass of